Bear Independent Podcast. I am here with my brother and friend, Mark. Thank you for joining us.
Bless you for having me.
Happy to be here. I enjoy your company. We've been blessed to do some sketchy shit together, and that's part of what we're going to talk about today.
Let's do
is our most recent deployment to with Grindstone Ministries to Appalachia, which is not really where hurricanes are supposed to go.
Right.
And before we got yelled at by Dudley, we were talking about recovery time on routine. And so what I wanted to do with this conversation is, there's been lots of coverage about Helene, not by the mainstream media, but by alternate media. And a lot of conjecture, a lot of opinion, not a whole lot of fact. But I think from a preparedness standpoint, general preparedness standpoint, there's a lot of things that we learned or relearned on this deployment that we can share with the people that maybe they think they got all their boxes checked when it comes to preparedness. And I think that too. We tend to operate at a high level of readiness. I have a lot of takeaways from this. One of which that no one would ever think about is routine. You were just saying it took you 2 weeks to get back on your routine.
Absolutely.
Me too, right? And for me, like just diet and exercise and sleep. Like my sleep still hasn't really returned to where it was.
Yeah, mine hasn't either.
So what does that look like for you?
So I give myself, sleep specifically, I give myself a hard bedtime. So at, I'm old now, I'm over 40. So like 9 o'clock, I'm shutting things down.
Yep.
And so that's what I do. I give myself a hard bedtime. I'm a big boy. Like if I want to stay up a little later, I'll do so. But I try to stay regimented with the time that I go to bed and the time that I'm going to get up.
Right.
Even if I wake up a lot. Even if I wake up, an hour before I usually get up, I will go and I will lay back down. Even if I don't fall asleep, I'm maintaining this schedule. Right? Like I'm going to horizontally time travel for this period of time. and then we're going to get up and I'm going to go to the next routine.
Right.
So that's sleep specific. And then you've got things like your caffeine intake. Not a big problem for me. Magnesium intake, I think, is really big. I think it's super underrated.
Are you taking magnesium before you lay down or after you wake up?
Yeah, but we'll both.
Okay. So I do magnesium before I go to bed, like right before I get in bed. I prep my, here's the supplements I'm going to take tomorrow morning, pre-workout mixed in the Nalgene bottle, ready to go. So that when I wake up in the morning, I'm on autopilot. Right. Plus, also we have this 8-month-old person.
Yeah.
Right.
Okay.
And so
fair.
That's also a contributing factor to routine being jacked up.
Right.
But I try and do my future self favors. I'm like, tomorrow me is going to love the fact that today me did this for me.
Exactly.
So I'll get all that stuff prepped before I get in bed. And like the last thing I do before I get in bed is I'll mix up a magnesium shot, shoot that, go get in bed, right? And usually my wife hates it that I can fall asleep like that quick,
so do I.
Right? She also hates I have a single earplug that I will stick in my ear and I'll roll over and be like, love you, babe. And then just, put my deaf ear on the pillow. My good ear has an earplug in and I'm out. Even with this tornado of a child in the bed. But I do magnesium before I go to sleep. I was doing it in the morning as well, but I think it was, I don't know, but I think it was contributing to lethargy in the morning because it's like a calming thing.
Yep.
And so typically when I get up in the morning, like I'm confronted almost instantly with, hey boss, all this shit is on fire. And so I don't think it was serving me in that capacity, but I do take it before bed.
Yeah. I wouldn't say I take magnesium right when I get up. More after I've had a couple cups of coffee, I'm awake.
That makes sense.
Yeah. And if you're waking up to the house being burnt down every single morning, I guess you want to be real strategic about when you take your calming input.
Katie Lynn had this bottle of stuff. They're called chill pills.
Okay.
I don't even know what's in them. They came from, I think, Melaleuca or something like that. And I have no idea what's in them. I know that it's not weed because I'm terrible at weed. But whatever's in those things,
They
there's
work.
been a couple of times. There's been a couple dozen times where I was like, "Hand me the chill pills."
I need this.
And I'll take 2 of those things, and a half an hour later, like, mood is
Like at
smoothed out.
work, you're doing this?
Yeah, yeah.
So it's not really for you.
It's
It's for
it's for
everybody
everybody
else.
else. That's correct. This is like, I love you enough to not rip your head off, so I'm gonna
Right.
take a couple of these chill pills. But diet and exercise for me, coming back from Helene, that's taken me a couple of weeks to get back on track with that. Because we've had a lot of people in the audience have been like, you're stupid calling it a deployment. It's not a deployment. You were never in the military. Shut up. And I was like, eh.
Yeah, I definitely have something to say about that, for
Say it.
sure. Yeah, it is absolutely like a military deployment. Uh, I did, I want to say 13 deployments
Mm-hmm.
in 21 years, and before you showed up, um, the slide that I was briefing every day, right? It's all bad,
Uh-huh.
and every day, sure enough, something else got added to that list. But the way I equated that deployment was, if you took a standard military deployment and you condensed it all down into like a week,
Mm-hmm.
that's what it felt like.
Mm-hmm.
And I was explaining it to somebody. The way I look at this is, during a standard military deployment, there's time for things to kind of ramp up and ramp down. Incidents are going to occur, things are going to happen inside and outside of your control.
Yep.
But in a dynamic environment like a disaster area, all that becomes condensed.
Mm-hmm.
So think of, a week in Jonesboro felt like the early weeks of Ramadi. Complete Wild West. Everything's burning down. Everything's going wrong, and it's something new each day. Same.
Yep.
Same.
Yep.
But if you're there, wherever you are, Ramadi, for 6 months,
Yep.
it's going to be high intensity going in, and then over time, it's going to start. This.
I'm laughing because one of my favorite moments, you were up in the talk, right? Which is just like the nexus of all the bad shit, right? It's like,
Yeah.
it's all right here, right? And you were at your laptop doing your thing, and you kind of look up and go, I'm gonna go pet my dog now.
Yeah.
You're just in the corner, just like,
Yeah, that's it.
yeah, but I mean, we are living on cots and,
For
living
sure.
on caffeine and nicotine and whatever
Oh, yeah.
food happens to be here. And there's so much external stimulus. Um, Specifically with Helene, we're grindstone. Predominantly what we do is debris management, right? We'll
Right.
do the logistics of serving food to the community and moving water. We can and have done that previously. But most of our skill set is like chainsaws, heavy equipment, dump trucks. That's
Yep.
what we do predominantly. And with a tornado, even if it's an EF4, EF5, large tornado that hits a large population center, like Rolling Fork is where I met you, right? Rolling Fork, Mississippi. That was a bad storm. That was really bad for the
sure.
people of Rolling Fork. Lots of debris, lots of damage, lots of fatalities and injuries. But it's all right here.
Yeah.
Right?
Relatively small footprint.
Exactly.
Yeah.
You're talking 1.5 miles square. And it's like, well, what's the intel cycle look like? Well, go here and cut the trees here.
Yeah.
And then go across the street. And then when you finish there, then go over to the next street and just, there you go, right? Versus Helene having a storm that size. You're talking hours across, that had the dwell time on that location for, I think, 26 hours. It sat stationary over that area. In that topography, dealing with a populace that was already intentionally isolated.
Right.
And I love the people of Appalachia.
They were awesome people.
I love them. I like the mountain man ethos. I'm into that.
For sure.
But these people were isolated voluntarily beforehand, right?
Right.
They chose to live up on the side of a mountain. We live out in the country. We like it that way. These are decisions that we have made. And so when somebody shows up and they're like, Billy Ray lives up the side of that mountain. You can't get to him. We need to get in there and get him out. It's like nobody could get to Billy Ray before the
Yeah,
storm.
exactly.
He
Yeah.
likes it that way. He's up
Right.
there cooking moonshine and hanging out with his 19 coonhounds.
Yeah.
And so, and then
I think you had said in another video too, Billy Ray up in the hollers was going to shoot you before
yeah, exactly.
the hurricane came through, right?
Exactly.
Don't go up there because he will shoot you. That's same before or same after as it was before.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, the power's
That's the way it
out.
was. Yeah.
And the trees are down, right? And so there's all this external stimulus that's coming into the talk. And then add in for us administratively, like span of control, people-wise. On a standard deployment for Grindstone, we might have 50 to 100 volunteers total throughout the course of 2 to 4 weeks, right? We were getting 100 a day. A day, right? And we had 20 to 40 people at the fob, just handling logistics at the fob, right? That's more than, in many cases, we would put out in the field.
Right.
Prior to this, we did Barnesville, Oklahoma. EF3, I think they upgraded it to a 4 Tornado. And we had Sector 5 in Barnesville, which was a mile by a mile and a half. So it's 1.5 square miles. That was our area. We had like 30 people out there, and we killed it.
Right.
Did a great job with 30 people. Commo solution was easy because we were 1.2 miles from the fob, and because of the topography, there was a river in between us, and Sector 5's up here, and the fob's up here, and we could line of sight simplex back to the fob. It was super simple.
Right.
Versus this.
Yeah.
I mean, you're talking 200 miles across.
Mantown.
Yeah, bro.
That's what it was. Mantown.
Yeah.
But that's why I argue it was a lot like a military deployment, right? So think of that battlefield commander that's trying to cover down on not just a 1 by 1 mile square. This is hundreds of miles of damage plus terrain. So it's not even a matter of, okay, well, we're going to go to these houses over here across the border into North Carolina. Well, how do we get there?
Yeah.
What time of day are we going to go? Because that matters. Are we gonna have our volunteers traverse this unknown road plus terrain without the sun? Right. That would be inherently more risky. We can't see the roads. We don't know how undercut they are. So now we're managing not just when and where, but when, like time of day. I mean,
so and
what
then
and where.
Having we had more assets that we could utilize on this deployment as well, like the drone guys from UXS, right?
Yeah.
One of the things that you were battle tracking was the damage to infrastructure. Is the road passable? Is the bridge
is there a road?
Right. The bridge is still up. Should we use it?
Right.
Right. Like there are lots of things like that. Like this bridge had a 60,000 pound rating before the storm. Does it still have a 60,000 pound rating?
Right.
Oh, well, TDOT said
and
that
according
it's
to who?
Yeah, right. Because they came out the day after the storm and inspected it. Define inspected.
Right.
Right. All those things. And so like we'd, in many cases, take the drone teams, push the drone teams out where they could stop where it was safe, fly ahead and look at the road. Yeah, well, you can see the surface of one lane of the road because that's what's remaining, but there's nothing holding it up because it has been undercut.
Right.
So don't take any heavy equipment across there. In fact, be careful if you're walking on it. And that's the road infrastructure in this whole area.
Yeah, that's one intel gap.
Right.
Like, is there a road? Intel gap number 2 is, can we use the road?
Right.
Visually, we can see it, but is it passable? Yeah, the last thing you want is to be driving heavy equipment over that thing, over an undercut road.
Yep.
Then all of a sudden we turn.
You're in the drink.
Yeah.
Yep.
And now you are a victim. You are part
exactly
of this battle problem.
And that was, with that 100 volunteers a day, that was part of the challenge for me I'm a bad fob it. Like, I don't like being stuck at the fob. In fact, I gave Bob gray hair one day and Dudley gray hair one day where I was like, I'm leaving. I think you too.
Yeah,
And
yeah.
I gave you gray
Oh,
hair
yeah.
too. It's like, I'm leaving. And Bob was like, you can't go. I was like, actually, I can. I'm going. And he's like, well, where are you going? I was like, North Carolina. He's like, where? Where in North? I was like, I don't know yet, Bob. He's like, okay, but what do we do? And I was like, hey, commo plan, I'm me. Med plan, I'm me. Security plan, I'm me. I'll be back within 72 hours.
Yeah.
I
think my exact words were, I hate all of that, but you're the boss. You know?
But I had to go. Like, I had to get out of there and go see. I was on day 4 of being stuck at the fob. In fact, there were so many people coming. There were so many things happening so quickly that somebody had said to me, I was like, where are the volunteers actually sleeping? Because I know, like, they're not all fitting in this building that we're using as the talk. So where are they? They're like, well, they're in the other church building down there. It's like, there's another building down there?
Oh, yeah.
Because of the topography of the parking lot, I hadn't made it past 20 foot in front of the front door of the talk in 4 days.
Yeah.
I was like, I'm just going to go down there and look because I don't even know what that looks like. And so people would show up and they're like, hey, man, I brought a skid steer and a track hoe and, 10 guys with chainsaws and we're ready to get to work. And I'm like, awesome. Well, where should we go? I don't know yet. Stand by. And they're like, well, we could just go over here. No, in theory, you can. That road doesn't exist anymore. And the road to get to that road that doesn't exist anymore is compromised. And that bridge you have to go across to get to the road that gets to the road that doesn't exist anymore, that's probably compromised too. And so you should not drive over that. Well, I saw a dump truck on it earlier. Yeah, and how many more dump trucks can go across that bridge before that bridge collapses?
Yeah. Also, it's 5 p.m. and you have about 2.5 hours of daylight left.
Right.
So expectation management. Where do you think you're going to go in X amount of time, get the work, and come back before a period of darkness?
Yep.
When your risk is going to go through the roof, right?
Yep.
I don't know. I'm not a tree guy or a chainsaw guy, but I can imagine you probably don't do a lot of that work in the dark.
No, not if we can help it.
Exactly.
Yeah.
And people are anxious to get after it, and I love that. I love that enthusiasm. But that's where, we talk a lot about leadership, and it's giving them left right limits that they don't necessarily like or appreciate, but it's for their best interest and the best interest of the organization and the mission to give them those rails, right? Those guardrails. And
well, one of the challenges we had too on this deployment was that typically the grindstone message is being driven by grindstone. Like you're watching me on the internet and I'm communicating information, or you're going to the grindstone website and you're getting information there, or the grindstone socials. Well, our reach on this deployment got way larger than that. Somebody came to me and they're like, Barry, you were on ABC News. I was like, what? How did that happen?
Right.
And that's just like one of myriad examples. So people that aren't necessarily inside of Grindstone's sphere of influence were showing up to the fob going, hey, we're here to help. And they were coming with this energy of like, we're here to cut grandma out of her home so she doesn't die. It's like, that was 10 days ago.
Right.
And they're like, but what do you mean? I saw it on the news. It's terrible. I'm like, it is terrible. We're past that now, though. Like, we're the focus of the mission has now shifted. And so it's awesome that you brought chainsaws and heavy equipment. Very few people need to be cut out of their homes now. We're getting back to rebuilding roads and restoring access. And so the workload had changed from that first 72 hours, this is a life and death situation, to now restore access, restore infrastructure. And then there's always this shift that happens from relief to recovery. And most people don't understand what that looks like. We are a disaster relief organization. So we go in the immediacy. Immediately after the storm, if we get there soon enough, we'll participate, assist in search and rescue. And then we're talking med, extractions, food, water, shelter, thermoregulation, right? That's what we do. And debris, right? Let me get this house out of your front yard, what's left of it, or your neighbor's house from a mile away that landed in your front yard. Let me help you with that.
Right.
Trees, called vegetative debris, and then C&D, construction and demolition. We take care of that, haul it out of here, so you don't have to worry about it. You don't have to pay an insurance company for it. And we all know FEMA's not going to do it for you, so we will help you with that. Kind of like, I view us as like a surgeon, okay? You got a problem, and I need you to like us enough to allow me to operate on you. So I'm going to come in here, I'm going to cut all the bad shit out so that you can begin to heal. And then when you get into recovery phase, you're never going to see me again, right? My job is to get in here, cut the bad stuff out. And then after that, you're handed off to a different doctor, a different team of professionals that will allow you to heal. You'll have physical therapy and the whole nine. I just need enough bedside manner and enough rapport for you to allow me to operate on you initially. And then after that, when we get into the recovery phase, the rebuilding part, that's not us. We don't do that. We partner with other people, like Appalachia Service Project on Helene. They're doing an awesome job rebuilding homes, and they should, and that's great. That's not what Grindstone does, because we don't have the staying power for that. We don't have enough people. We certainly don't have enough funding because we're privately supported. And Appalachia, the Jonesboro, Tennessee FOB was 801 miles from where we're sitting currently. That's long legs for us.
For sure.
You know? And so we get in, do the relief portion, not necessarily the recovery portion. And so then you get people that have this expectation. I drove from insert state here to come and assist. I'm here to cut grandma out of her house. That's done with. That's already happened. Okay, well, let's start rebuilding homes. Well, we're not ready for that yet. That's going to be another couple of weeks. And then when that happens, we are doing a handoff to somebody that does do that. And so there were a lot of expectations of volunteers that were outside of Grindstone's universe that showed up to participate that didn't quite understand what we do or what the situation on the ground was. And so an information control got away from us because it wasn't just us driving the narrative anymore. We were getting mentioned by all kinds of other media outlets that didn't know who we are or what we do either. They're just like, well, nobody's doing anything, for example, in Eastern Tennessee. The one organization in Eastern Tennessee that's doing anything is Grindstone. Okay, cool, thank you for the kudos, but now all these people are showing up to come volunteer with Grindstone without even knowing what Grindstone is or what we do. Or understanding the situation. And so we had this large volunteer base, and a lot of them, I told a lot of people, I said, hey man, it's awesome that you came. You know, they show up at 11 o'clock in the morning. Like, I'm here to help. It's like, cool. You'll get a tasking at 7 a.m. tomorrow morning. Right now, I need you to move water. Well, I didn't drive all the way from Michigan or wherever to move water. Well, buddy, right now, what I got for you to do is move water.
But that's what we need.
Right.
Yeah.
Right. And what I would tell people is, I can't keep you from going out here into the community and being a hero. And if that's what you want to do, then you should go do that. But you're not going to get a Grindstone vest and a t-shirt. You're not going to be operating under our license to go do that. If that's what you want to do, go do that. Or wait until tomorrow morning when the Intel guys have developed more targets for me to be able to hand off to you, because I can use another skid steer and another chainsaw. I just don't know where yet. And I don't know who the med people are I'm going to put with you are, who the commo guys I'm going to put with you are. I don't know how you're getting there yet. I don't have any of those details. So,
because it turns out this is a team, and it's more than just having a skid steer and a chainsaw, right? We need to build the team around, you know, whatever the requirements are. You know, we're assigning capabilities, you know, in terms of stuff and people to leverage against whatever the requirement is. And there was a lot of people who came with skid steer, the heavy equipment and chainsaws ready to get after it at 3 and 4 p.m. That they made their decision, like, okay, well, we're not going to wait. We can put you to work, but let us get there, right? Because we've got teams that are deployed right now. Again, the functional word being team. There's multiple parts and pieces to this, not just you and your thing.
So the Camp Miller team, right? So Camp Miller, we were fobbed up in Jonesboro, Tennessee, across the border into Pensacola, North Carolina, is where Camp Miller was at. And there was another organization that had established Camp Miller, and I had, on the day that I ran away, one of the places that I went was Pensacola. And so I go out there, I have a look, and I'm like, yep, there's work here for Grindstone. There are things that we can do. Meet with the guys. It was, I think, a former Green Beret. I forget the name of his organization. But they had stood up Camp Miller out there, and they had a pool of volunteers there, and they're like, yeah, we could use the help. I was like, cool. Well, I don't know. I know that we need to send people over there. I don't know who I'm going to send over there. Well, Sean from Hack My Homestead, awesome guy. I met him at the Self-Reliance Festival in Camden, Tennessee, that John and Amanda from SOE and Nicole Sauce put together. And I was talking with him. He's like, I want to come out. I want to help. Awesome. So he ends up coming out, and then a guy named Uriah from Utah. I was sitting at my little table out front of the talk with a legal pad, and I had figured out I need this equipment, these operators, med, commo, support logistics. Here's all the different individuals I'm going to need. I don't have anybody to slot into here other than Sean. Sean said he would go. Well, this gigantic 40-foot gooseneck pulls up with like a brand new skid steer, brand new track hoe. This guy jumps out, Uriah. He's like, what's up, man? I'm Uriah. I was out in Moab doing Jeep stuff, and I heard you guys needed help, and so we cut our vacation short, went home, loaded up, and we're here. I'm like, awesome. How do you feel about camping? He goes, we came here to camp. I was like, cool. How many people you got with you? He goes, well, there's 14 of us. Can any of y'all do like administration and logistics? He goes, oh yeah, Debbie, I forget her name. He's like, oh yeah, she can handle that. I was like, cool. You're all going to Camp Miller tomorrow. He's like, all right, what's Camp Miller? I was like, I don't really know.
Yeah.
I don't know.
But that's where you're going.
But you're going, right? Yeah. But we had to assemble that team of equipment operators, fuel, the vehicles, the trucks and the trailers to get it there, and just like chainsaw.
Com plan, med plan.
Right. And this is the details that a lot of people miss. It's like, well, I got a chainsaw guy. Okay. What saw is it? Okay. Oh, it's a Steel 500i. Awesome. That's going to burn a lot of fuel. Okay, so you're going to need more fuel. Bar oil. What size bar is on it? Oh, it's got a 28-inch bar. Okay, so that's 91 drive links, which is a very rare size. So you could put a 25 on there, which is 84 drive links, because we have a lot of that, or a 32, which is 105 drive links, because we have a lot of that. We have 3 28-inch chains at 91 drive links. Oh, okay, because it's all logistics. There's no steel dealer.
Exactly where I was going to go.
Right.
Yeah.
There's no steel dealer in Pensacola, right? So when you say chainsaw guy, the saw, the fuel, the bar oil, the files, the chains, right? All the things that go just for chainsaw, right?
Yeah, care and feeding for the saw and for the person.
Right. And so like Sean had a team out in Pensacola, Camp Miller. They killed it. But it was a team, right? We had, there's an Amron guy out there, wasn't there?
Yep.
Yeah. So that they could talk back from Camp Miller back to the FOB in case there's an emergency. Because not only were the legs long for Grindstone, coming from eastern Oklahoma to Appalachia, but then from Jonesboro, the FOB, we had teams 2 to 4 hours out working.
Right.
And so
where any one of them could have had a medical emergency.
That fast.
And now we need to be able to flex resources to those that emergency, right? Or at a minimum get notification that there was an emergency so we can start chipping away at that problem. Like, okay, well, who was hurt? How badly is he hurt?
Yep.
Do we need to front load conversations, either phone or radio calls or whatever, to the nearest hospital? What is the nearest hospital? All those things
it's
that
under
are
9 feet of mud.
Right.
Yep.
Yeah. All those planning considerations that people aren't necessarily onboarding when they just show up, right? So back to your point concerning preparedness, it's way more involved than just having the saw to do a thing.
Yep.
Right? It's what does it take to support this solve, to support the person in the solve. That guy's probably going to get tired at some point. So is there another guy?
Yep.
You know, personnel management. Where are they going to sleep? How are we going to feed them? If there's an emergency, what are we going to do? What's self-care look like? What does external care look like?
Yep.
All that stuff is wildly important for disaster assistance, and probably even more so to the person that's in the disaster, i.e. the preparedness or the opportunity to exercise your preparedness plan. Are you building these things into your plan?
Well, and that's where I think the gold nuggets are in this conversation, right? Because the prepper sphere hyper fixates on like a handful of things, one of which is firearms, like projection of force.
Right.
I think everyone was armed. Like of our people, all the locals, everyone was armed. Praise the Most High, like nobody got shot or had to get shot. Not our people. Now there were other volunteer groups, I think, and this is unconfirmed by me. Patriot Front, I think, was one of the groups that had somebody got shot.
No, it was a different. I was given a different name.
Okay.
It was a way out there name. I can't even remember what it was.
And that was in Johnson City, is what I heard. But anyway, people do get shot. Like in Dulac, Louisiana, when we went down there, which is where we found waffles at, which is awesome.
Yeah.
There were people getting shot in the face over 5-gallon gas cans of fuel, right? So it does happen. But, and again, like Grindstone is an emergency situation. It is one of the coolest things about Grindstone is I think it's the closest you can get to actual SHTF and like not die.
I would 100% agree with that.
You know what I mean?
And you get the benefit of learning the lessons that other people are learning the hard way.
Yep.
What did their preparedness look like pre-incident or pre-event? How did that fare? What are the things that we need to backfill these people to make them whole, or at least, you know, get them to the next day?
Yeah.
You get to learn those lessons the easy way. So incredible learning opportunity along with a helping opportunity or a service opportunity.
100%. And you're doing it in controlled chaos, right? Like you're sleeping on a cot. We're eating what there is to eat today, right? We have no network here. We have to go build a network, right? And pretty quickly make friends with the local politicians if they're worth being friends with. Make friends with the county sheriff. Figure out who's in charge here. Who has all the soft power here? I want to be friends with that person, right?
Yeah.
Make friends with the locals, and then develop your local nationals, right? Like
yeah, for sure.
Kelvin.
Oh
my gosh.
Yeah, and I'm gonna get it right this time. Do you have can you grab my phone, Dudley? I think it's Vertical Access Professionals.
Yeah. Kelvin is amazing, amazing human being.
Thank you, sir.
Because he owns a rope access company in that area.
Yeah. Kelvin with Vertical Access Professionals.
Yep.
Absolute gangster, saving lives, getting out there and helping so many people. Kelvin, man, if you hear this right now, thank you from the bottom of my heart.
Amen.
You were incredible.
Amen. And he knew the topography. He knew the people. He had the skill set, right? His area of familiarity off the charts.
Right.
Like, so who are those people, right? Because we don't have that network here, but we need to identify who those people are, make friends with them real quick. And then the hearts and minds of the local community, right? Who are the key players in there? Like Taylor Cochran, for example.
For sure.
You know, great guy. And he had the hearts and minds of a significant portion of the populace there.
And Cody.
Yep.
Same situation, right? So those were
Cody Day.
Yeah, those were soft power leaders in their community without, I don't know, having an overt title.
Yeah.
Right? But they commanded presence whenever they were in an area. They knew who's who in the zoo. They knew the mechanics of their community. Those were awesome people.
And just like, oh, that guy's a cantankerous asshole. He always has been. You're not gonna win with him. There's no way to win with him. Okay, next. Like, we'll try and help that guy. There was one guy. You
That's
know,
years of context that he's giving
exactly,
you.
exactly, right. There's one guy. He had tree. The report was he had trees down on his fence and his cattle were getting out. Right, and he had a quarter-mile of driveway that washed away. In our wheelhouse. An older guy, he's by himself up on the side of this mountain. Love it. Perfect target for grindstone. Let's go. Turns down the trees have been down for years.
Right.
Okay, well, we're here now. Do we cut these up? Yeah, we're here. Cut up the trees. The driveway was shit before the storm. Okay.
Yeah.
And so, all right, we're here. We helped the guy to the best of our ability. He still doesn't love us. Cool. Turns out he doesn't love anybody. Right.
Right. Yeah.
All right. Whatever. And so it's a truly austere environment. There's no law enforcement, there's no EMS, there's no fire, there's transportation is greatly hindered, supply chain is all jacked up, there's no electricity, which means Commo suffers, which means Intel suffers, and we're gonna go to purposefully seek out environments like that to go operate from positions of strength to bless other people and learn in the process. And that's, like, from a preparedness standpoint, I personally haven't found anything that's a better learning opportunity than a grindstone deployment, because to your point,
Yeah.
we get to learn vicariously through all these other people, which brings me to Little Germany. Little Germany was like your pet project.
Yes, it was.
Yeah. Tell me why.
Yeah. Well, they were completely cut off. So the context on Little Germany was when the storm came in, waters. I would love to know the actual figure of how high that river rose, but looking at where the debris was wrapping around trees, my guess is somewhere around 20 foot. So a 20-foot increase in the river is wild.
Yep.
And that storm is happening into the period of darkness, right? Into the night.
Yep.
Well, they wake up to feet of mud. There was a guy there by the name of Gordon, and he wakes up, he sees, 3 and 4 feet of mud. First thing he does is jump on his skid steer, and he's going to start clearing the road because he's an awesome dude, and that's what he's going to do. He's going to clear the road now to reestablish mobility inside the community. And then once we have mobility inside of our little community, then we'll be able to start reaching out further and further, right? Well, phones are down, so that's an easy thing for them to identify. There's no phone, there's no internet, there's no power, there's no water. So he starts using his skid steer to clear out mud. And as he's chipping away at that problem, he eventually gets to a kind of like a small hill at the end of the street. And once he's able to clear to the small hill, he sees like, oh man, that the only road in and out is completely gone. These people are legit trapped. And that's when he makes the decision to get on the radio. He calls out, and a couple of people answer. So of note, Terry was his main point of contact out there. There were some other people, like, I don't know what his last name is, but Randall, shout out to Randall and Terry, who answered the call. We will circle back to this, but shout out to Rollo, who owns, or he's a trustee for the K4 LNS repeater. There were some follow-on issues that we'll get to. But it's an example of ham radio communications actually saving lives.
Yep.
And so that's what happened. Gordon hops on the radio and immediately notifies people, hey, we're alive back here. I can't see you, and we know that you can't see us, so here's our current status. Relays that. Praise the Most High, they didn't have really any damage inside Little Germany. It's really a question of mobility. Their mobility has been cut off, as well as all the services, modern services that keep a community functioning.
Right.
All right. So this became my pet project, number one, because of the ham radio piece, and because there were gaps that we could easily fill.
Let me just pause you for a minute because I want everybody to picture in your mind a church youth group hangout room filled with cots with sweaty bearded men, with a ping pong table covered with caffeine and a little bit of whiskey and some nicotine, and a conference table covered with computers and papers, and a corner desk with like 1 to sometimes 6 ham radio operators, like nerd grouped around it, huddled over the radio. And this is our talk. This is what we have going.
Right.
Yep. So
we can we'll jump into establishing the talk here in a second.
Yep.
But it became I don't know why it really became my pet project. The ham radio aspect really appealed to me. I think it highlighted how important communications is. I think it's a very underrated capability for personal preparedness planning. And I think there's an opportunity there for a large amount of expansion, or at least there's a lot of growth opportunity, whether or not people want to capitalize on it. I think it highlighted the need to get beyond the technician level of amateur radio, so getting into the general level and getting on HF communications and exchanging not just voice information via voice, but information via data. I think that really expanded, and it was my hope that it impressed upon you that need as well, because we had just done that exercise with Refuge. We were trying to highlight that capability. So immediately my thought is, how do we support not just the community, but the community behind the community? In this case, Terry, because he's the person I was interfacing with each day. So Terry brought his truck and his own personal equipment every day to this pop-up command post by the Washington County Sheriff's Office. From sun up to sundown, that dude was there talking on the radio, or at least being there in case Gordon called or somebody from the community called. Well, clearly there were gaps there. Number one, he's a one of one. So if anything happens to Terry, we need to be able to quickly back him up, right? So we need backfill personnel, but like tailored personnel, the right personnel.
Right.
And then the capability inside Little Germany didn't match the outside. So Gordon's talking on a 5-watt Baofeng, right? So the topography and geography of Little Germany, being in that little cove, was great for a kind of protective or security aspect, but terrible for communications.
Right.
So the fact that Baofeng got out is kind of something of a miracle, but it did. And Gordon had already established a plan before the storm, a personal preparedness plan for his community, and got on the local 2-meter repeater. As I understand it, he really didn't talk on the repeater. It was more of him just listening and ingesting that information, right? But he knew to have that radio program beforehand, and he knew if there was an emergency, he was going to have to use it. And sure enough, he did. But all right, so we've got a capability gap on the inside. So how do we match that? Evan from Radio Made Easy donated radios, cabling, and antennas, packaged it all up for us, and immediately had it couriered down. All we had to do was test it, and then we humped that in first thing.
Huge shout out to Evan, by the way. Bless you, brother. Thank you.
Yeah, I've been thanking him over and over again, but I feel like he can't get enough thanks.
My go-to now. Anything I need that's radio related, and anybody in the audience needs anything radio related, and I'm by no means the expert, but I'm telling you, just on a personal level, go see Evan. Start with Evan first, and if Evan can't accommodate you, he can make recommendations out from there. But Evan was a huge contributor to the success of this deployment for us.
100%.
And he's got a heart of gold, and he helped a lot of organizations and a lot of individuals, not just Grindstone, in this storm. He was pushing out equipment to everybody.
He was with very little question.
Yeah.
Right. The question was, what do you need, and where can I get it to you? And that was it. And he was pushing stuff out.
Yeah.
Amazing work. Going back. All right. So Evan donated the equipment. We humped it in on what we called the Ho Chi Musk Trail, aptly named because the next piece of equipment that we couriered in was a Starlink. So we backfilled the radio to get them up on a greater capability. So increased wattage. 25 watts is a whole lot better than 5, all things considered. And in the event that there was a communications problem with the repeater, he could easily hit Terry Simplex, and they can go 25 watts each, and we're good there. Starlink gets them up on cell phones using Wi-Fi calling, and gives them a little bit of internet access and scratches the itch for information outside.
Yep.
So this community became information starved with everything else, right? So the flow of water, super important. Flow of electricity, super important. Well, it turns out the flow of information is arguably as important as the first two.
There were some like civil affairs type concerns that came up with this, like who has access to the internet? How much?
Yeah.
How does Tina get to play her? You know, she's on level 89,000 of Candy Crush. Does she get to sit here next to the Starlink all day and hog that bandwidth? Like, how does that work? How do we democratize access to the single Starlink now?
Yeah,
you know,
yeah, that's a real consideration. Is he who has the resources has the power, right? And that's at some point, and I don't know for how long or how aggressive, there was a point where that was the issue, or that was at least the topic of conversation is, well, why here and not somewhere else?
Right.
There was a second Starlink that was brought in that went to another gentleman's house who, this guy became known as the Walmart, Little Germany Walmart. And so now we've kind of split that power, for lack of a better word. Obviously, not everybody has it, but at least it's a resource that people can go to.
It's
right?
an interesting psychological consideration that
that I didn't even think about.
Not on anybody's radar.
Right.
You know, it's like, well, I got 19 Glocks and 47 AKs. It's like, okay, cool. What about information flow?
Right.
What about communications? You know, and that's why I want to flesh out this conversation, because preparedness is not a multifaceted thing, right? For me, it's maintaining normalcy for the people that I love. Well, what does normalcy look like? How do I perpetuate that, right? There was, I think at some point, books will be written on Little Germany.
They could be.
And everything that happened inside of there. We've had also people in the comments who are like, it's not called Little Germany, it's called Little Switzerland. I think you're thinking of a different area.
That's a different place.
Yeah. So continue.
Going back to the information starvation, to highlight what that meant to them, or what that means to us now and in that moment. They were so starved for information to know what was happening around them that they were asking for pictures loaded on a thumb drive to be couriered in on what, and I'll give him complete credit. Kelvin, I would say Kelvin established the Ho Chi Musk Trail because he owns that climbing company, Vertical Access Professionals. Buy all of your climbing equipment from Kelvin and his team at Vertical Access Professionals. I don't know what his website is. But he went in basically day zero and established climbing ropes so you'd have something to hang on this legit goat trail, right? So you saw, if you were if you were to erase a road from the side of a mountain, which is basically what happened, on the outer edges, it was about as wide as a sidewalk, or maybe a little bit more like a single lane road. But as you got towards the center, it got more narrow, more sketchy, and then you had this middle ground. I'd have to look back at the video to see how long that stretch was, but it was definitely no wider than my boot. And incredibly risky without any equipment. And now we're couriering things in. Propane, gasoline, fresh scoop cat litter, like maxi pads, food, water, everything that you can shove into a rucksack and hold in your hands is what we were couriering across this goat trail, the Ho Chi Musk Trail. I'm working on a sign for it too, by the way.
I love it.
Yeah. We're gonna make it official, but incredibly high risk, and I think it's noteworthy that one of the things that they wanted couriered in, along with this physical product, was an information product on a USB drive. So put yourself in their boots for a second to think. After several days, they can't see what's happening around them. Everyone's telling them that they're helping and they're onboarding it, but how many days have to pass before you start, really getting itchy for the information? You're like, all right, well, are they really helping? How are they helping? We're still here. The EOC is using their UH-60 helicopters to bring some stuff in. That's a whole other topic of conversation. And so they can see that. That's tangible to them, but that's really all they have. They have what they're hearing on the radio and what they're seeing with their own eyes. And they're seeing two things with their own eyes. They're seeing the 60s that are coming in, or they're seeing the 60s come, do circles, and then leave again. And I thought it was important that they saw grindstone vests. So maybe that's why. Maybe that's why it became my pet project. I wanted them to see that people are actively helping them. Even if it just looks like us hiking this trail to bring cat litter, I want this community to see it, because that's how we're showing them, yeah, we love you. Yeah, we don't know you. Each one of us is from several states away, and we're here to bring you whatever you need, big or small. And that's what we're here to do. I want you to see that. I want you to see my yellow grindstone vest every day. I want you to get sick of seeing it. Because I want you to know that we care. And I think that became a problem too, right? Because I got hyper focused on Little Germany, and they're one part of this multifaceted operation that is Jonesboro, Tennessee, and then it included North Carolina.
What was the name of the town? Waffles had a whole crew out over there for a couple of weeks. The guys, the Wisconsin guys, the tree guys were over there with them as well. He took Wrangler Star out over there. So we had, it'll come to me, but we had personnel spread out in multiple different locations, multiple lines of effort, in all these different geographic locations. And at some point, probably about halfway through my time there, I was like, hey, love you. Little Germany, got it, check. What about all these other things? And I think it's admirable to what you were doing and you maintained your line of effort on Little Germany. You did some handoffs with some things and some people. I think all that's admirable and it's good, right? But it illustrates how we can become target fixated on a thing.
Oh, for sure.
And all these other things are happening around here that actually, this thing that I'm fixated on may not contribute in any meaningful way to this overarching battle space that we got to operate in, right? It's this thing right here. And arguably, we could have just stayed on Little Germany the whole time. Like we're going to adopt Little Germany. This is the grindstone thing now. This all our main effort is Little Germany. But it was challenging. The scope of the storm was challenging because there were needs everywhere, and then qualifying those needs. Right. One of the great benefits to having civilian-led relief and response is that it's completely disaggregated. Mrs. Jones has a tree on her house. Okay. Well, the tree on Mrs. Jones' house comes across my desk. All right, cool. We're going to send guys over there tomorrow. Well, it also goes across, the EOC's desk. The EOC is going to send guys over there tomorrow. Cool. Well, Mrs. Jones' neighbor sees it, handles it. By the time we get there to deal with it, as her neighbor should, right? It's awesome. Good job. Love your neighbor as yourself. But we get there, and it's already handled. So now this is a dry hole. And the team from the EOC, whoever their volunteers are, EOC's Emergency Operations Center, they send people over there. And now there's a perceived turf war over a target that's already been hit. Mrs. Jones is good. Problem solved.
Right.
And we've got 2 volunteer pools that are working for 2 different organizations that are now pissed that they got geared up to come out here and do this thing, and it's already handled. And they're mad at each other because they're like, "Well, you're in my territory." No, neither of us is from here. We're on Mrs. Jones' front yard, right? So you have this dick measuring contest that's happening, and that's like one property. And so what the EOC will typically try and do is coordinate relief efforts so that they can say, well, if it's tree work, that goes to Grindstone. Grindstone, here's all the tree work. You guys take that, you do it. Well, early on, the EOC came to our fob and literally tried to start a fist fight. Like literally.
Yeah.
So me and Kyle told this guy, he doesn't need to be named. He's a piece of shit anyway. Yes, I'm talking about you. You know exactly who you are. How could you say that? I'll say your name on camera if you want. But anyway, what gives you the authority to be here? Who do you think you are? Blah. I was like, we can call the governor if you want. First of all, my authority comes from the creator of the universe.
Exactly.
So you can fuck off.
The Most High.
Right. Second, I have human authority from the governor of the state. I can call him. He's going, you can't call, you wouldn't call him. I was like, okay, hold on, please. Dudley recorded the whole thing because he's Dudley, which is awesome. But that was our handshake with the EOC. What are you guys doing here? Who do you think you are? What gives you the authority to be here? And it's like, homie, we're here to help. And this is going to startle everybody. I'm not billing you to be here. And I'm not billing them to be here. And I'm not billing the federal government to be here. So that was something to navigate for me at my level operationally. Was typically the EOC is an asset to us and we are an asset to them, right? We are mutually supporting one another. And in this case, that did not happen. There was a lot of political bullshit going on behind the scenes in Eastern Tennessee and Western North Carolina, to where the elected officials in the area, nobody plans for something like this to happen, right? And if they do plan for something like this to happen, they have a response plan in a binder on a shelf at the volunteer fire department. Nobody's looked at it in 20 years.
And really it's just a plan to deviate from.
100%.
Yeah.
100%, right? So if there's any planning, it's often bad planning or it's not been updated anytime recently. And so the local, giving the local officials, the local politicians the benefit of a doubt in most cases, they deserve the benefit of a doubt because it is their first rodeo. That's what we bring to the table. This is my 46th rodeo in 5 years. How can I help you? Right? We've seen this before. Maybe not an unprecedented hurricane in Appalachia. Haven't seen that before. Hope to never see it again. But this type of environment, we are used to working in this. So let me enable you to do your job better, which is represent the people who duly elected you for the preservation of life so we can move as quickly from relief to recovery as possible. I want to smooth that transition for you and have as few people lose their lives as possible. That's what I'm here to do. And typically at the EOC Emergency Operations Center, we are welcomed with open arms because they don't know what they're doing, and they know they don't know what they're doing, and they want as much help as they can get. Well, in this case, we're authorized by the governor to be here, and I'm authorized by Dad to do what we do. We're a nationally registered 501c3. We have the same authority as the American Red Cross. It's not possible for you to tell me, local official, that I can't operate here. I'm authorized by the Creator, the governor, the federal government. Like, what else you got?
What else? Yeah.
Right? What else? So, but their hackles were up. They were bristled from jump. And so that contributed to this being a semi-permissive environment for Grindstone, because in many cases we were duplicating efforts because there was no coordination between us and the EOC.
Right.
Because they didn't want us to be here in the first place, because I think my supposition is we were making them look bad. They felt as if we were making them look bad. And that's ignorance on their part, because it's not possible for you to look good in this instance because a hurricane hit Appalachia.
What's a great example of tactical level thinking?
Yeah.
Where, and that's not, well, it's not called the Emergency Tactical Center, right? It's Emergency Operations Center, right? So they, at a minimum, they should be operating at the operational level. So the three levels being strategic, operational, and tactical. And I think that pissing contest and myself getting tunnel vision on Little Germany are great examples of getting pulled down into that tactical picture, because the more we dive down into the tactical picture, the more control we exert around us. I can control what I do in terms of goods distribution into Little Germany.
Yep.
Very easy. What I can't control at the operational strategic levels are if the cellular service comes back on. We are at the mercy of those workers doing those things. And I think it's the path of least resistance for us, right? So I think it's no surprise that there's a gravity to pull you down into the tactical, because that's where our control is.
That's a good word. Let's take a quick break and we'll come back, talk more about Little Germany. The highlight of your trip, Little Germany.
Yeah.
Hauling trash.
Hauling trash. That was, and it doesn't sound like, it's nothing glamorous for sure.
Well, let's talk about that though, because preparedness isn't glamorous. Nobody's making YouTube videos about what should you do with your trash in end times. So
right. So for Little Germany, trash became the #1 problem for them. #1 because they didn't have a place to store it. So you have a community of people. There were, I want to say, 84 or 86 people on a normal day. Half of those were women and children that were evacuated out by Hilo. So now you still have 40 plus people generating trash, and they're generating trash that is, they're all non-perishable food items, right? So where do you put all this trash? They have refrigerators that haven't had power, so everything that was in there is now bad. And it's all getting bagged up, and it was taken out to the helicopter landing zone, the HLZ, to be taken out. Well, that didn't happen. I don't know why that didn't happen. It pisses me off to think about why that didn't happen.
It wasn't our helicopters that didn't do it.
No. Yep. The 60s were supposed to be taking this trash out to solve this problem. They didn't do that. And I was having issues getting in touch with the air boss to make this thing happen, and I just made the executive decision, I'm going to take care of this.
The air boss at the EOC.
At the EOC, yeah. So I had enough. All right, well, if you're not going to take care of it, I'm going to take care of it. And so I went downstairs and started pointing at volunteers like, hey, do you want to do something? You want to get weird? All right. So, some were more enthusiastic than others. And then I briefed them like, hey, this is what we're going to do. We're going to go take out the trash. Here's the situation in Little Germany. There were two, I would say it's got to be around somewhere between 40 and 60 bags of trash that has been rotting in the sun for the past 3 days. That's now attracting bears.
Yeah, because across the river is a bear sanctuary.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah. So there's bears.
Yeah.
Right. Now that's an added problem for them that is completely unnecessary. And to your preparedness point, what do we do with our trash? So, I volunteered to them a very easy trash management strategy. That is, burn everything that can be burned. Food, paper products, burn that. Plastic, smash it down. Try not to burn that because you get toxic fumes, and then metals are just not going to burn.
Yep.
So the stuff that we can get out on foot will be metals and plastics. But in the meantime, they have all of this trash on station.
Yeah.
So I gathered up a team. I said, we're going. We're just going to do this. And damned if we didn't. I think we started with 8 to 10 volunteers came with me, and we started bringing the trash. Not quite. What's the bucket brigade? So not quite bucket brigade style, like a hybrid bucket brigade. So we'll get it down to a certain point, and we're just going to keep moving trash until it fills up whatever that space is on the trail, and then we'll shift our areas down. Well, while we're doing that, more and more volunteers are coming because Kyle, back at the talk, is just sending them to me.
Yep.
I did not request. I didn't request permission to do it, and I didn't request for help. But Kyle backed me up so well that day. I think we ended with easily 20 to 30 volunteers out there, bucket brigading all this trash, the nastiest trash. Again, so there were multiple bags of whole turkeys or whole chickens that have been rotting in the sun. All that juice is pouring out all over you. So way more than I would ask somebody to do.
Because of a lack of refrigeration.
Right.
In that case, because of a lack of electricity.
Exactly.
And so typically the advice that you hear when something like that happens is you want to eat, the power goes out, the power's going to be out for a while, or we don't know how long the power's going to be out for. You want to eat the stuff that's in your fridge first, consume those calories first, and then the stuff that's in your freezer because it's thawing out during that time. Then you cook the stuff that's in your freezer, eat the stuff that's in your freezer, and then you move to your pantry items and then your long-term food storage.
Yeah.
But that begs the question of like, okay, well, how am I going to cook this, right? A lot of what people have in their fridges and freezers, like, I need a microwave, I need an oven, or the Instapot, whatever, in order to cook this food.
What's your energy source?
Exactly.
If it's electricity, it's gone now.
Right.
And what was left over was fire.
Right.
So they're either building campfires and roasting, meat over the fire, which really appeals to my caveman nature, or it's propane and charcoal.
Yep.
There's no natural gas in that area, and it would have been severed with everything else.
Yep.
Well, that requires fuel on station now, and that's how we found ourselves couriering or humping in 40-pound tanks of propane, which is even more wildly dangerous now because if you think about it, it's kind of a leadership nightmare. We have these random people from all over the United States who, some of whom, like I have a background in the military, so it's easy for me to tap into, but other people don't.
Yep.
But we're volunteering to help. And we're on this goat trail that is wet because there's a spring up overhead and it's just constantly dripping. The lines that were put in by Kelvin, some some of the community is using also to try and get hot meals in.
Mm-hmm.
And so every day that trail eroded to a worse condition.
Yep.
And now we're adding weight plus explosive material.
Yeah, put this bomb on your back.
Right.
Yep.
Yeah.
Yep.
I don't know, man. You shut up and do it.
Yeah, the general director was like, "Hey, don't fall.
Yeah.
Just don't fall."
That was it. My guidance was if you have to throw something or drop something into the river to save your own life, then you do that. Because there was nothing there that's worth a life, right? There's a bigger picture here, which is super ironic because I was so hyper fixated on the lowest picture to a point where I'm, humping fresh scoop cat litter.
Hearts and minds, bro.
It was important to them.
Yep.
And so early I said, well, okay, well, if it's important to them, or like it's a command relationship. So if you're the commander, what's important to you better damn well be important to me.
Right.
So I can meet your objectives at all levels, and that's so I'm aware of any what we call CCIR, so Commander's Critical Intelligence Requirements. So these are tripwires of information that you need to know about in order to make executive decisions that are timely. Well, if I'm not paying attention to the stuff that's important to you, I can't meet those objectives or those requirements. And so I set the same requirements to the people of Little Germany. If it's important to them, it's important to me. What is your number one problem? And we're going to solve that. And then tomorrow we're going to attack the next number one problem until we reach, again, that very gray area of crossover between relief and recovery.
Usually for me as an indicator, when we're starting to hit that inflection point from relief to recovery, is when the requests for material support change. Early on, it's like, we need food, we need water, this person needs medicine. Okay, check, that's expected, right? And then at some point, every storm's different, but at some point between a week and a month out, it's like, hey man, if you got any of them Ginsu knives, I'd love to have like a non-stick skillet and a Ginsu knife. It's like, okay, these are no longer like direct life support requirements.
Yeah.
These are nice to haves, not need to haves. And when you start to see more and more nice to haves come in, that's typically an indicator that we're shifting to long-term recovery. We've pushed enough product and service out into the community that we've met the immediate life-threatening situations. People have food, they have water, they have fuel, they have some type of communication, some type of electricity generation, whether that's, by the way, Signature Solar hooked us up on disaggregated solar units. The Bear Nation, you guys and girls did a phenomenal job with the Amazon wish list.
Man,
to the local
you broke the
postal service shut down. They stopped. And so we had a box truck twice a day going to the postal service to just coming back with a full box truck of stuff that was being shipped in from the Bear Nation. For all those things, small scale solar, and then truckloads of generators showing up, and not small generators, but like 12, 13
beefy generators.
Yeah, and for what? Predominantly to power refrigeration. If we can get one of these things wired into somebody's home, okay, it's a 50 amp service that's coming out of here. Most homes, new homes, are running on a 200 amp service. Older homes, 100, 150 amps. Well, there's not enough amps coming out of the generator to run the whole house.
Right.
But if I can get lights on, power a well pump, and potentially run the refrigerator / stove, not all at the same time.
Yeah.
But if we can do the breaker dance in the main panel so that our draw isn't exceeding our supply, and we can cook on an electric stove and keep the refrigerator or / freezer on most of the time and run the well pump, we got something here now.
So to your point from preparedness, you need to have an electricity management strategy.
Yep.
So if you have a generator, or you are donated or gifted a generator, you need to know what your draw is for your refrigerator, for your TV, if you need to keep kids busy or whatever. You need to know what this total draw is, and you need to be able to craft a strategy to meet that requirement, right? And so you're going to hear me that's what the military hammers on. What are the requirements, and how do we meet those requirements with what we have? It's just the same with electricity. It's the same thing with food. What are your food intake requirements? How about the opposite end of that spectrum, right? Your refuse, right? Your excrement. What's your excrement management not policy, plan, thank you. Yeah, what is your plan for that? So inputs and outputs?
Literally.
Yeah. Food, water, electricity, information we've talked about.
One of the things that's been really interesting for me as Grindstone has grown and more personnel have come alongside of us is I don't have a military background, but I am surrounded by a lot of people that do, right? And it's an honor for me, and also very curious to me, to be in the talk surrounded by all these people that are like, hey boss, what do we do? I'm like, I don't know. You're the guy. You tell me what to do here, you know? And it's, I think what has served me in that capacity has been on the business side of understanding I don't have to know everything, right? I have to be able to lead this team of people that as a conglomeration does know everything, or can at least find out answers to all the things that we need to know, right? And so it's been very curious for me to kind of like step outside of myself and observe some of these situations sometimes where I'm like looking around and I'm like, these are some of the most gifted, talented people with some of the most high level training on planet Earth. And they're all looking at me going, what do we do?
Yeah.
Like, I don't know. Scott Brooks, shout out to Scott Brooks.
Yeah, Scott.
Longtime friend and brother. He's been deploying with Grindstone since before Grindstone legally existed.
And Scott did get handed kind of a turd.
Yeah.
And the guy flourished. He owned it.
He's amazing. He's an amazing human being.
Super good dude.
He looked at me and goes, what do I do, boss? I said, Scott, do the right thing and then do it over again all day.
Right.
He's like, okay. He's like, what does that mean? I was like, it's literally that.
That's what I was telling Bob. I kept harping on what's the next right thing.
Yep.
There's so much chaos around us. This environment is completely out of control.
Yep.
Let's focus on the things that we can control, and let's just move to the next right thing.
The first 72 hours I was there, my prime focus was to shift us organizationally out of reactive to proactive.
Right.
I was like, we need to start buying our time back because we can't psychologically continue to react to contact over and over and over and over and over again. We need to develop some lines of effort here and then support and staff those lines of effort. And then it's like, this person needs thing. Okay, that's logistics. That goes over here in this bucket, right? This person has tree on house. Okay, that's saw teams. That goes into this bucket, right? And kind of start to differentiate all of that out and implement systems to where if it's logistics, that's a logistics problem. Go see Adam Prime, go see Adam 12, go see Ron, right? They handled that, right? If it's personnel, you need to go talk to Cindy, right? Or talk to Angie, talk to Amy, have them handle that. Oh, this is an intel thing. Go upstairs, talk to Mark, right? Oh, it's a commo thing. Go see the Amron guys, right? It's a security thing. Go talk to Bob. It's a SAW team thing. Go talk to Waffles, right? And start to differentiate all of this out to where we had sub-leaders, if you will, right? And everybody has a purview. And so now we can all stay in our lanes a little bit better amidst the chaos to where now we're happening to the chaos isn't happening to us. And that's by no means a knock on anybody who had been there before me, including Kyle, because this was Kyle's first deployment as director of operations for Grindstone.
Man, that's
talk about a break-in.
For sure.
Unprecedented, right? And so
he killed it.
100%.
He did amazing work.
100%. We were all drinking through a fire hose, me included. And so when I came in, because I was unable to deploy initially because I had pastoral commitments back here at home. And so I was like, you guys go there, establish a foothold. I'm coming. I will get there. And so I get there and I'm looking and I was like, this is chaos. And that's not again, I'm not criticizing or judging anybody inside of our organization. The entire situation was chaos.
Yeah.
And so it's like, we have got to bring order to this chaos. And so that's what I began to do was look at the people and the resources that the Father had gifted me for this deployment and go, hey, you're good at this, you do this. Okay. You're good at that, you do that. Here's your lane. Now stay in your lane. How can I help you, enable you in this lane? What do you need? And where I took over day to day was with taskings, right? And so typically, we touched on this earlier, we're not going to filter this situation through an intel cycle because it's pretty basic, right? Like, what do we do next? We do tornado stuff right here because it's right here. Hurricanes are more challenging because hurricanes they do, again, I will make some people angry with this statement, but this is based upon my experience. Hurricanes do a moderate amount of damage to a very large area. Tornadoes are the opposite. They do a severe amount of damage to a very confined, constrained area. Even Mayfield, Kentucky, that storm was on the ground for 186 miles in a more or less straight line from southwest to northeast, and it was a mile wide to at max 5 miles wide in fields, right? And so it's easy storm track. Tornadoes tend to go southwest to northeast. They hit down here and they pick back up again over here, and you can follow it. You can put a drone up and get a summation of the entire situation. It's right here. So the intel cycle is load up your trucks, your heavy equipment, start here and just start working your way this way. The end, right? Versus a hurricane where you have damage and debris and impact spread over 100 miles, maybe more. And then you overlay that storm over that topography.
Right.
In that socioeconomic, geopolitical situation that's happening there, right? With these people with this mindset, it's like, this is way more complicated.
And historical significance to that particular area.
Yeah, and the time pre-election that this is going on, then you get, and we're in between 5th group and 7th group, and we've got the 82nd and 101st and the National Guard out there, all taking direction from FEMA, actually, in my experience, getting into pissing contests with FEMA, not wanting to do the bidding of FEMA. And then we could talk about the weird stuff. Okay, it's all bad. That area was super interesting from a national security standpoint and from an international industrial base standpoint before this storm.
Right.
And that got exacerbated by this storm.
That's where the intel piece,
100%.
there's a gap that we realized pretty quickly, and that is for communications, there was an organization that we could reach out to. So shout out to Amron and JJS and all the deployers who came in on their own time, their own dime, with their own equipment. So thousands of dollars worth of equipment into a literal disaster area. And executed emergency communications.
They killed it.
They crushed it. I think we could, and they even rewrote their operating procedures based on this deployment as well. So learning is happening all around, learning through kind of shared hardship, I would say. And some things are little happy to glad changes, and some things are complete different operational changes or larger operational changes. How do we move people and places and things? But
and conversing with JJS, this is something that Amron has been wanting to do, and had been looking for opportunities to plug in with good organizations to do this. And so it was, from my vantage point, the hand of the Father to be able to take Amron and glom it onto Grindstone for this deployment. And it's mutually beneficial for both organizations. And there's a shared ethos there between both organizations, that they had been prepared by the Father for years to have this capability, to have the individuals to be in a position to where they could deploy for something like this.
Right.
Just like we have been. And so the coming together of these two entities to be able to affect emergency communications inside of this unprecedented storm, it's literally a miracle.
Yeah. Well, yeah. I'm sure it was all coincidence, right? That's what I was going to say.
Right. Yeah.
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 I mean, truly,
serendipity.
It really makes you ask the question, what does a blessing look like? I would argue that's what it looks like.
Yep.
A preparation of a group and equipment and operating procedures all fleshed out years before the organization to bolt that onto.
Yep.
That's amazing kind of providence, right?
And how many people had to have a conviction and be obedient to it?
Right.
To get to that point.
Because everything's a funnel, right?
Right. Right. Yeah, it was brilliant.
Yeah, so they crushed it. My connection to Amron has grown as well. So I definitely want to work with them more. I see only benefits there. I can talk all day about how awesome that organization is, but it also highlighted a gap that we don't have an organization like that in terms of intel.
Yep.
So this is where I think in the intel sphere with, Forward Observer, S2 Underground, and I don't know who else is out there doing the intel piece, but
Monkeyworks,
yeah.
Yep.
That there needs to be maybe more of a hybrid model of deployment capability that can also bolt on, right? And it doesn't need to be bolted on to us necessarily. It could be bolted on to anybody, Red Cross, Samaritan's Purse, or whatever. But we needed a much more robust intel capability so that we could keep up with the intel cycle. So if I could, when I peel back and look at this deployment, we have a tendency of looking at, what did we really screw up? And I don't know, I wouldn't say that intel, I don't think that we screwed anything up. It's just we were really hampered in terms of capability. And if we had additional resources, we could have executed, I think more efficiently or in just in a better way generally.
I'm pretty sure, given the work that they do, they don't want to be named on camera. But we did have several people who have an intelligence background who came out on their own time, on their own dime, to be able to come and assist. And had they not, we would have been all the way underwater.
Yeah.
So shout out to those guys.
Yeah, for sure. There are a couple of guys in particular.
Yep.
And we're still in communication, right?
Yeah, one of them owes me a pizza.
Yeah, for sure.
Asshole.
A good one.
A good one.
Yeah, not just any pizza. I was just talking to him yesterday.
Awesome.
But in any case, they, again, on their own time, on their own dime, deploying a very niche capability to help us with our intel cycle was huge because at any given point, it was me and one other guy. A two-man intel shop for a hundreds person organization is not adequate.
Yep.
We did what we could, but we were far behind the power curve on a lot of different issues, whether it was from, where do we deploy, debriefing teams from that day, which is absolutely critical, into understanding what changed today and where do we need to go tomorrow.
Yep.
Who's who in the zoo as far as an organizational perspective. Again, like every day, I was trying to keep a pulse on what critical infrastructure looked like. That was changing every day.
Yep.
It takes people to run a talk. We were blessed by having Amron for comms, and I would say, from an intel perspective, we need to come together and figure out what what does that capability look like? Because we know there's going to be another disaster.
Yep.
There always is, right? There's always another tornado. There's
Yep.
always another hurricane. We need to figure it out collectively.
I agree with that completely. And these are the things that most people aren't thinking about. And they're not thinking about it because they haven't done it, they haven't experienced it, they haven't revealed those own gaps in their own systems, right? Bailey is where Waffles was at. And then the Upper Pigeon Roost Free Will Baptist Church, which is a mouthful.
Yeah,
It's
a good one.
But just we had 2 to 4 recce teams pushed out every day that were reporting back to the TOC. And typically, we'll push out recce teams early on in a deployment. Like if we look at like a tornado, what I want to know is, where did it first touch down? Where did it pick back up again? What's in between those? Where's the locus of damage? Where do we start first, right? And Idabel, Oklahoma, for example. Idabel is not that far from where we're sitting. And so when that storm first hit, we were down there immediately. I remember it hit on a Friday night. We were going into Shabbat. It's a Rev Shabbat. The same storm that hit Idabel was threatening here. And I was sitting in the hallway with my wife and kids with iPhone in one hand, watching Ryan Hall, ham radio in the other, monitoring the local repeater, and looking at the radar. And it shook the house, and we got done with it. And I looked at my wife, and she knows the look. She goes, go. I was like, all right, I'm up. She goes, I know. And I popped open one of our chats, and there was like 200 messages in there. Like, are we up, boss? Are we going? What are we doing? I was like, we're up. Search and rescue. Let's go. So we convoyed down there. We hit Idabel. We slept in a gas station parking lot that had no electricity. Made coffee out of the fob trailer. It was awesome. It was search and rescue all night. We get set up. And now it's the morning of, day 1, right? It's like, well, what do we do? Well, we do good things. Cool. Where? Right?
Yeah.
And so we've got a team pushed out looking for a fob, a place where we can fob up at. We ended up getting we kind of did that thing that we do where we kind of take by force sometimes. It's like, well, we're here now.
Yeah.
Thank you for the county fairgrounds.
Soft power.
Soft power, right?
Yeah.
And Dudley made me talk to the governor of Oklahoma that morning, which was fun. At a steel 661 Magnum with a 32-inch bar on my shoulder, talking to Governor Kevin Stitt.
Which is a huge flex, by the way.
Yeah. I'm more men than him.
Yeah.
That was the message I wanted him to receive.
Yeah, right. I didn't say that.
Hey, Gov.
Yeah. It is quite a statement.
Yeah. But
once you're there, even if and I thought about this with Jonesboro.
Mm-hmm.
So with the stand-up of Camp Miller, we could have essentially shut down Cherry Grove
and bounced
and shifted, lift and shift your talk. You could do the same thing at the fairgrounds, right? But it's about establishing that first point, because once you have your start point, everything else is now just momentum.
Yep.
And yeah.
Well, we kept Cherry Grove because of the distribution that was going on. That this Helene for us was predominantly a distro mission. And we had good infrastructure between Cherry Grove and Bristol, which was the centralized collection point for that entire area. Bristol Motor Speedway was serving as, and is serving as, a collections point for all this overflow of stuff that was going in. So they were like the Amazon warehouse, and we were like the Amazon distribution center.
Right.
Right. And part of what helps with explaining what the mission is to the volunteers, to the local populace, is having the language to wrap around it. And so I realized pretty early on, what we are doing is we are Amazon for Hill people. Yeah. That's what we are. What do you need? Give me 24 hours. I'll figure out a way to get it to you in 24 hours, right? And so we would have stuff that was coming in to Cherry Grove, would be that semis or our box trucks or trailers being brought in, unload it here, sort through it. We would store on site the stuff that we were going to need immediately, and then kick everything else up to Bristol where it can be held in reserve, because I know I'm going to need more pallets of water, but I don't need 4,000 of them here right now.
Yeah.
So that can go there, and then when I need more, we'll send the trucks up to Bristol, get more, bring it back down, push it back out into the community. So with recce teams, we typically early on will push recce teams out to ascertain where the most damage has occurred, what the storm track was. And in Idabel, we had that information, I believe it was 6 days before the National Weather Service and the state of Oklahoma did. So when Oklahoma Emergency Management came in, they saw us at our fob in Idabel at the county fairgrounds, and they're like, well, we want to sit down and compare notes on the storm track. And like, we already have it. They're like, well, where did you get it from?
That's a position of strength.
Right. And they're like, well, where is it? And we had a county map up on the wall with push pins in it. It's like, here it is. They go, well, how did you get this information? I said, we developed it.
Right.
They said, what do you mean? I said, well, it's real simple. I took 2 teams. We started here. We went in concentric circles out from here, and they mapped on Google Maps anywhere they saw storm damage. They came back. We downloaded that, put push pins in the map, and now we have it. And they're like, well, when did you have this? A week ago. They're like, why didn't you tell us? It's like, because we're Grindstone.
Yeah.
Because
is that a requirement?
Yeah, because right.
Yeah.
That was also interestingly from a commo standpoint. We there was a local repeater there, and we were on an FRS frequency there, and guys were using that FRS repeater. It was privately owned repeater for their rag chews, and I just kicked them off of it, and they took it, which was cool, because at some point I was like, hey, you guys are interfering with a federally declared emergency disaster relief. This is TJ Morris with Grindstone. I need this repeater. And they just shut up for the remainder of that deployment, which was cool. Kudos to them, which is kind of the opposite of what we experienced.
That is not the same. But But I will say, there were oddities with that. I'm losing my train of thought a little bit, but there were intel gaps, right?
Yep.
So going back to the distribution sites,
Yep.
Commo between distribution sites sucked.
Mm-hmm.
So I've been racking my brain. How could we have done this better? Instead of everybody, instead of the distribution sites contacting Bristol for these onesies, twosies items,
Mm-hmm.
I think a better strategy would have been a more decentralized model where they're all talking to each other.
Mm-hmm.
And how do we do that rapidly? So I've been thinking a lot about, all right, well, if we have the 2-meter repeater that's up,
Mm-hmm.
is there a product that you could sit down in the distribution sites and they would all, my box, my widget talks to all the other boxes and widgets. And now we have a view of, what each distribution site needs, what they have, and we can start to shift assets between them without, without that central point, or there's just a better way of doing that. I mean, trying to figure out what does that solution look like, but I feel like there's something there. And then to your point about the repeater and the emergency declaration, I think there was an issue there as well. And there was a unilateral decision by the trustees in Jonesboro of the K4 LNS repeater to go back to normal operations.
Mm-hmm.
And if you read the comments in Jason KM4ACK's video, I sat down with him and we talked about the same thing. If you look at those comments, there's a lot of blowback intended for the repeater trustees, which I think do deserve a little bit of credit. So the repeater did go down at one point because it was all operating on emergency power.
Mm-hmm.
That repeater was kind of the lifeline between Terry and Gordon in Little Germany.
Yep.
Well, the trustee did the same thing we did on the Ho Chi Minh Trail and was humping LP gas up a mountain to restore power to the repeater, which then restored life-saving communications, right? And
Right.
I think he deserves a lot of credit for doing that. Thank you for doing that. I think that's a big pro to the communications conversation.
Yep.
And then we get to start talking about the other side of that coin, and that is the unilateral decision that was made to return the repeater to normal operations, and then a confluence between what we regard as normal and what we regard as an emergency.
Yep.
And you can't do both at the same time. Like, that's not a communications strategy. Either we're in one or we're in the other.
Right.
And I don't think that was communicated very well. And that's where we as Grindstone felt like we were getting kicked off the repeater.
Yep.
And decided to shift our communication strategy over to the GMRS repeaters that were in the area, and then onto the already overloaded Mount Mitchell repeater.
Yep.
Which I don't know if you heard any of the comms traffic on the Mount Mitchell repeater. Those folks were absolute gangsters. Dan and Vicky, and then there's a couple of others. We as Grindstone bought Vicky a new ICOM radio because she burnt hers out. Providing life-saving communication service to her community, which was super rad.
But even there's a teachable moment in there. Like,
right.
2 is 1, 1 is none.
Yeah, exactly.
Right?
You're talking about $1,000 pieces of equipment too, but you know, they can fail, and obviously, and we have now seen that. We've seen that they can fail. So what's our planning strategy, our mitigation strategy for the next storm?
Yeah, what's the duty cycle on that piece of equipment?
Right, yeah.
It might be eternal at 10 to 25%. It might be 30 days at 100%.
Right.
You know, we don't know that until you pressure test those things. The whole commo game for me has been eye-opening, and I think when we finish this conversation, I think we'll do a separate conversation on commo specifically, lessons learned for Patreon. But I have, for the majority of my life, resisted becoming a licensed ham radio operator because of what I have perceived to be the gatekeeping and stodginess of that community. I have myriad ham radios. There's multiple repeaters in this area. I monitor all those repeaters. I don't transmit on them. And some of the stuff that I have, like when they get on there and do their rag chews, I'm just like, dude, who cares? Shut up.
Yeah.
Now, my use case is vastly different than most people's. And that's one of the things that I have to remind myself of. They have a hobby that they're invested in. The mechanics of it, the amplitude of the signal based on the ionosphere, they get off on that stuff. I'm like, I have to be able to affect communications so that I can support the personnel that I have in the field.
Right.
In an emergency situation. That's my use case, and it's wildly different than most people's. Most people, if they have a radio and they have repeaters that they use, are never going to be in that situation. That's almost entirely my situation.
Yeah.
Right. And so it's very, very different.
I'm the same way. That's exactly how I bucket that capability, that 2-meter repeater capabilities for emergency communications.
Right.
But on the flip side, and I think it was an excellent point that was made to me, a rebuke, if you will, and that is for those people that are on those repeaters each day, just rag chewing, that is their normalcy.
Yep.
And so part of the decision making, the executive decision making for that repeater was to give them back their normalcy.
Yeah.
Because there was just a disaster. And I can't argue that, right? That's, for some people, that was the mental, that's part of that psychological relief that they were getting.
That's an interesting aspect, because my brain goes to so I can go both sides of this coin, right? It's a privately owned repeater. right? But it's broadcasting on airwaves that are with oversight from the FCC,
Right.
and then the F and FCC is federal,
Hmm.
and there's a federally declared emergency here.
Right.
And so how does that work? Because on the one side, like, I'm very much so government stay out of my business, right? If it's my repeater, who cares? You guys can go pound sand. It's my repeater. But on the other side, everybody who's keying their microphone on this repeater is federally licensed to the FCC, and there's federal oversight on that repeater. And in this case, we have a federally declared emergency. And so I don't like governmental overreach. I don't like unnecessary amounts of government. I rail against those things. But in that situation, for the preservation of life, um, I can see the benefit of being able to say, we're in a federal disaster. If we don't have access to this ability to communicate, people who will get injured, it's just a matter of
Right.
time, people will
Yeah.
get injured. We need to, part of what the role that the helicopters played for us was being able to affect CASEVAC if needed, right? So I have to know where people are. I have to know the scope of their injuries, a 9-line, if you will, right? I have to be, somebody has to be able to call this in, which is why we're forward deploying AMRON operators with
Right.
teams out in the field, because there is no reliable cell network. And yes, there might be Starlinks in some places, but they're not everywhere. And just because you transmitted on the Starlink doesn't mean I received it on my Starlink back here. And so we have to be able to affect communications. And so from a command and control standpoint, for me and my brain, I get the argument of the psychological release of these guys being able to rag chew on their repeater. That makes perfect sense. To what extent does a federal emergency overshadow that? And should it? I don't know.
Yeah, that's exactly the place that I'm at. I'm pulled in two very different directions. And some context on Rolo, who is the trustee for the repeater. This guy's like a pillar in his community. He does a
Mm-hmm.
lot of good. While I don't agree with all the decisions that were made,
Mm-hmm.
I think that I assess him to be a good person
Yep.
and working in the best interests of his community.
Mm-hmm.
And it's really just the friction
Mm-hmm.
that we've observed is really just from ambiguity in what is normal and what is an emergency and where do
Yep.
the two meet. And I think that gray area
Yeah.
is where we are.
Well, and that's where you're going to get friction. You only get friction in the overlap, right?
Yeah.
He's trying to perpetuate his normalcy. We're trying to perpetuate ours, and that's where the friction is. And so I don't know the guy, and he probably is a good dude based upon everything that I've heard about him. And so I'm more than willing to give him the benefit of the doubt there. Operationally, what that means for us on the grindstone side is we need to have a combo capability that's not dependent upon somebody else's repeater,
I agree.
which is the direction we're moving in now, right?
And I mean, you can be a good dude
Mm-hmm.
and make bad decisions.
100%.
I do it all the time.
and and define bad,
Yeah.
right?
Yeah.
Because
Exactly.
bad is contextual.
What is good?
Right? What
bad,
is a good decision for him
Right.
in his bubble and his sphere of influence may manifest itself as a bad decision for us with our context over here, and vice versa.
Because there were second and third order effects that obviously were not taken into
Right.
account, or maybe there were, and
Mm-hmm.
in that decision making process,
Mm-hmm.
it just didn't outweigh.
Well,
the
it
decision,
goes
right?
back to you could also take it to reputation and rapport of grindstone, right? So people that see those yellow grindstone vests coming and going and doing good stuff and moving equipment and cutting trees and delivering food and fuel and all of that, they're having a positive experience with the brand of grindstone, if you will. But the people who are trying to talk on their repeater, who are having their traffic canceled or over talked by grindstone, they're like, man, screw those guys.
Yeah.
Hate their guts, right? And so there's this weird, it's back to soft power, this weird balance, this weird dance that is not, that conversation is not prevalent at all in the preparedness space. It's just not there.
Right. Yet it is a reality.
It's huge.
And we know because we lived it.
It's huge. It's always soft power. Every deployment we've ever done. I started doing disaster relief after Hurricane Katrina, almost 20 years ago now, right? It's soft power. It's you don't get anything done without soft power, and I think that's part of why the politicians, no matter where we go, generally don't like us. And I'm good with it, and I don't care, because our soft power is standing in place of their soft power. And they live there, it's their community, these are their constituents, which is why it's like, just be friends with us. I want to be your friend. I'm not here to replace you because I'm going home.
You know what it is? It's the opposite problem that we have in the military. So for like a counterinsurgency, you want to create vacuum in a network, a leadership vacuum, right?
Yep.
Because you can exploit that all day. This is the opposite. This is too much leadership being brought into. It's too many cooks in the kitchen, if you will.
Yep.
And now you're disrupting that balance of power between the two.
Well, that's why predominantly, if we're looking for people if Grindstone is looking for people that we want to partner with, not the homeowners, not the property owners, but as far as where's the locus of soft power in this community, it's generally going to be the school superintendent, the county sheriff, the fire chief, the mayor, people like that, right? In some cases, it's the librarian. Like in Barnesville, Oklahoma, the librarian knew everybody. Awesome.
Yeah.
Awesome, right? The ladies at City Hall, the ladies behind the counter at City Hall helped us so much because they had maps and phone numbers and addresses for everybody. Right. And so I need to talk to Mr. Smith. Oh, well, he lives at 123 Johnson Lane, but it's destroyed, but I've got his phone number. Okay, is there a way to get a hold of him? Well, yeah, he's staying out at his daughter's house. She lives over here. Okay,
context.
Can you contact him and let him know we would love to talk to him because we need access to the property. We need to get in here and do X, Y, and Z. And then facilitating so that the gas company needs in, the power company needs in, Department of Transportation is coming in here to assess the roads. And so partnering, right, like our local nationals, right?
Yeah.
Those are the people that we look for to befriend them righteously because we're here to help. Right. And I don't want to usurp your authority in this situation. I want to come alongside of you and empower you because it's your first rodeo. It's not our first rodeo. And our whole reason for being here in the first place is we've had a conviction from the Spirit, from the Most High, to come here and love people and bless people. Right. And so, because we are who we are, the tools in our toolkit that we bring with us when we come look like, in many cases, a bunch of cool guys, right? It's like, who's on your recce team? It's like, well, that guy's a former 7th group, and then that guy was team 2, and then this guy, and they're like, okay. And so when you're a hammer, a lot of problems look like nails, right?
For sure.
And it's like, yeah, we don't need to create a leadership vacuum. We need to empower the leaders that we already have here. And the way we're going to do that, and we're going to make them look great in this time of chaos.
Yeah.
Right? The mayor in Barnesville comes to mind. Like, he was a good dude. So he communicated so well with his constituents. One of the churches there, they had like an all hands meeting, like everybody in local government, all of the local townspeople, everybody got together at this church, and we had been asked to be there, which is cool. And so me and another guy from Grindstone, we sat up front, and the mayor gave his little speech, and he was like, look, he's like, I got to be honest with you. I don't know what we're going to do, but we're going to do it. And it's going to be the right thing. And folks, we're going to get this figured out. He's like, my phone is ringing off the hook. We've got the state police here. We've got the local fire here. We've got our local cop who's here. We've got Grindstone that's here. We've got Florida Emergency Management coming in to help us manage this storm. He's like, we're going to get it figured out. So he's like, I just need you to bear with me for 24 hours so we can get a plan together. And I was like, good. He didn't lie to them. He didn't
Right.
offer any false hope. He didn't posture. There was no politicking involved. He was just dead serious and honest with them. And then the guy, the Oklahoma State police guy who was there, OHP, Oklahoma Highway Patrol. I said a few things. They asked me for my input. So I said a few things, like basic stuff, like sort your debris. If you're moving stuff to the curb, vegetative goes here, construction and demolition goes here. Your what they call whites, which your appliances, that's a separate pile, and then vehicles are a separate pile. Don't block the roadways. Don't cut stuff you don't know how to cut. Let us do that. If you have a technical tree, we'll handle that for you. Watch out for live power lines. If you smell gas, stop, call that in. Those kinds of things. I said you should have restricted access on the roads. And what that means by restricted access is if you're not working in this area, you shouldn't be here because the roads are already tight. There's debris everywhere. We don't need 1,000 people coming through and taking pictures for Instagram. So control the access to locals who live in this area and people who are helping in this area, which means establish sectors, which they did. Barnstable did. They did a great job. Sector 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. We were given 5. It was the largest area. Sector 5 is us, which means if you're not Grindstone, you don't need to be in Sector 5. And so I'm telling them all this. The guy from OHP gets up, cool dude. He goes, look, we're here to help. And he goes, that guy right there, he points to me, he goes, that guy knows what he's talking about. And sounds like they're better at it than we are. And so we should just do what he says. And if there's anything you need from OHP, you just let me know and we'll do it for you. I was like, cool. Can you control access to Sector 5 for me? He goes, you got it. Awesome. And so that is the type of situation where we can come in and help all of these people who they all want to help too, right?
Yeah.
But they don't know how to help. Well, we do. And we're better at it than the government is too. Usually, it's 2 weeks after we've been there that FEMA first starts to show up. And then everybody has this idea that, well, when FEMA gets here, it'll be okay. They don't do anything.
Yeah.
Their job is actually, there's nowhere in their job description does it say they're going to do anything.
Well, that's why I'm formally requesting from this new administration that you be the head of FEMA. I'm working that now. I don't know what that's going to look like.
Yeah, well,
I think you do a great job.
Well, as long as I don't have to report to Washington, D.C., I'll consider it.
Well, good news. I think all those agencies are going to get pulled out of the D.C. area.
Decentralized? That's good. I like that.
Yeah.
One of the things, we're all over the place, but who cares? One of the things that I like about Florida is that Florida has its own JSOC-style emergency management team inside of Florida, which is awesome. They have a bunch of just super high motivated, super capable individuals, sea, air, and land, man. They've got it all figured out that when a hurricane comes, they have a task force, a joint task force. And if you look at the elements that are inside of it, it looks like JSOC. It's awesome. And so we get all the time from people in the Bear Nation. It's like, there's another storm coming to Florida. Are you guys coming? It's like, you actually don't need us. You guys are good at this. Like, do that. When, East Overshoe, Indiana gets smashed by a tornado, we're going to go there because they're not good at it.
Right.
And so I would love to see in Oklahoma, which is where we're at, we get enough freaking tornadoes that we should have a task force. The state of Oklahoma should have a task force that there's personnel that are trained and equipped and empowered that the next time this happens, when Moore gets hit by its 6th tornado, we're like, okay, this sucks. What do we do about it? Well, we have reps and sets on this.
Yeah, exactly.
And then, Texas has, they're not bad, but they're not nearly as good as Florida. They have an emergency task force as well that they'll deploy throughout the state, and they'll deploy to other states as well. Oklahoma needs something like that. And if there's an interest, yes, I'm talking to you, Governor Stitt, or your friends, whatever. If there's an interest there, I'd love to consult on that because we've seen it enough times, we've done it enough times. And that's a big part of what Grindstone brings to the situation is hey, let us help you. And that's all soft power. I can't bring to bear our skills or capabilities or talents in this situation until somebody here, even if the governor has authorized me to be here, somebody at the local level needs to co-sign us being here. Not legally, not because we lack authority to be here, but because of soft power. I need buy-in from somebody.
Buy-in, yeah.
So I need buy-in from somebody. And that's, but when the world ends, man, SHTF, like
it's still going to exist.
100%.
Because for those people that are in those disasters, that is an SHTF event.
Exactly.
And I think if we're not learning from those, I mean, I don't want to call them opportunities, but we should be learning from these events so that we get better, that we get these reps and sets, and how what a blessing it is to be able to volunteer with Grindstone and learn those without having to endure that hardship by yourself, right? Because I mean, your house gets hit by a tornado, you're not really thinking about your lessons learned at that point because you're trying to cover down for your family and for your community. You're just trying to get kids under a roof and dry and fed.
Yep.
You're not there.
Yep.
Mentally, you're not in a mental space really to learn. You're really in survival mode. Where if you're part of a volunteer organization that's coming in, I think it's a testament to the values. You're not only giving of your time and treasure to help others, to be in service of others, but you're also learning so that if an emergency happens to you or your neighbors, you have some semblance of how to tackle that challenge.
100%.
I
think,
yeah, back to planing.
Yeah.
It's gold for your preparedness plans.
And most of it isn't sexy, but I would submit not dying is sexy.
Yeah, for sure.
Like the skill set that one person or a group of people is required to possess and be able to execute on is much greater than pull security, cook beans, right? Not that that's not part of it, but it's not the majority of it, especially the security standpoint. And the reason I bring that up is because YouTube is infected with this gun tuber mentality that if I just have a Knights Armament SR-25 and a Zeiss scope and the appropriate Gemtech suppressor and Sierra Match King 175 grains, then I own this terrain, this is mine, and nobody's gonna mess with me. Really though? Like, first of all, who's gonna mess with you? Have you done an area study?
Yeah, exactly.
Like, do you even know who's here?
What's your threat landscape look like?
Exactly.
Have you mapped the human terrain? Also, something that my stepdad used to say all the time is you got to go to sleep sometime.
Yep.
That's a real limitation to the human condition. Like you need to eat, you need to go to the bathroom, and you need to sleep.
Yep.
Or you'll die.
Yeah.
So to think that you have all these weapons and ammunition and the will to execute on that in a given operational area is only going to last you so long.
Yeah, and what about rate of attrition?
Right.
Like, okay, you're the best gunfighter that ever existed. Okay, and you got a crew of you got your own little squad. All right. How long can you go run that squad operationally before you start to have attrition? Right? And what does that look like? Guy turns his ankle, he's out of the fight.
Right.
Right. And for what? The analogy I use is we're going to go over here and hit this house to get grandpa's moldy graham crackers. For what purpose?
Yeah.
Right. That's stupid. And so people hyperfixate on the ability to project force. And I think it is part of the calculus, but it's not the majority of the calculus.
There's a much bigger picture.
I don't want to be in a position where I have to project force.
Right.
I don't want to get there. Doesn't mean like we shouldn't train those things, possess those skills. We should. And I think it's every American's right to to do all of that. I'm a constitutional absolutist. If you can afford an M1A2 Abrams, get one, bro. Like, I'll be over here in my F-22 Raptor. Let's party. Like,
think of all the jobs you'll create with maintenance.
yeah. Right. But it shouldn't need to get to that point. And in my observation, in my experience doing grindstone stuff, it rarely does get to that point. And so, like, sleep, you hear it all the time. Sleep's a combat multiplier. Go 3 days without sleeping or sleeping terribly. Now, basic tasks are difficult.
Right.
What starts to fall apart? Well, the Intel product is late because I haven't slept for 3 days. And so now tasking going out here to field teams, logistically, everything just starts to fall apart. Or I should have been listening to the radio and I was dozing off and I missed that communication that I should have recorded, documented, passed along. That didn't happen.
Or you're driving a skid steer.
Yeah, and you crush somebody.
Right.
Or you cut your leg off with a chainsaw. So it's all the things that aren't sexy, and it is a group of people, a concerted effort of a group of people, not individual heroics that actually move the needle on these things. The teams are all comprised of wonderful individuals, but it's not any one person's, we're not dependent upon any one person's individual awesomeness, if that makes sense.
For sure. How can we be awesome together?
Right.
That is what makes a team. Mm-hmm. And you have to train that before you execute it.
Mm-hmm. I get these questions all the time that are like, well, Bear, I'm a 68-year-old woman and I got a bad hip and like nobody wants me on their SHTF team.
You would be an awesome radio operator.
My brain goes to, come on with it. Like, yes, so like it just morale-wise, like shout out to all the awesome ladies from Grindstone.
Facts.
It's like, it's gonna sound weird, but like having fob moms is incredible. And they're doing 100 other things as well. But just like there's something about the comfort that comes from knowing that like there's a lady here who's a sister who loves us, and there is food and clean pillowcases.
Facts.
And and just like that, it's just sorted. It's one less thing I got to handle. And they don't get like, they're so overlooked in the prepper sphere of like, well, no, I need all military age males that can, shoot, move, communicate, sustain. It's like, okay, well, who's supporting them?
Yeah, who's going to care?
Yeah.
Yep. And that's what the fob moms excel at, is that they care.
Yeah.
I shout out to Miriam.
Oh, I was just thinking of Miriam. Yep.
Who was in there like cleaning showers, the least glamorous job next to humping out rotten trash.
With a smile on her face.
Yep. And I wanted to highlight her in front of the group so that as a group we understood the importance of having a clean place to take a shower after you've been working in the muck all day.
Yep.
It matters. That is what care looks like. Yep. Or the hot meals that were coming in. Mm-hmm. Wouldn't it be nice to have a hot meal and not have to eat that can of beans?
Yep.
It matters. That's what care looks like. Or having clean laundry. Mm-hmm. In the case of Rolling Fork, we would bag up our laundry and they were washing it for us and bringing it back.
Yep.
How much that matters to put on a clean pair of pants to go out and do the dirty job again and over again. That's sustainment.
Oh yeah. And it's network, right? Like none of this happens in a vacuum. None of this is an individual effort. It's this beautiful concerted conglomeration of individual effort that actually gets the thing done. And like the people of Leland, Mississippi, we were working in Rolling Fork, but we were fobbed up at the National Guard Armory in Leland, which sounds way cooler than it is.
Yeah.
I heard National Guard Armory. I was like, no shit. Do they have howitzers? Like, let's party.
No.
It's a warehouse.
It's a warehouse.
Yeah. It sounds way cooler than it is, right? But the people of Leland, Mississippi, they came to us, the police chief and the mayor, awesome guys. And the local ladies who were there, one of which was the librarian again, right? And they came to us and they said, hey, we want to love our neighbors down in Rolling Fork. And we have decided that the best way for us to do that is to empower Grindstone. And so Leland, Mississippi is committed to supporting Grindstone, so Grindstone can support Rolling Fork. Everything we needed and everything we wanted, we had there.
Right.
Right? Like cots, laundry. I mean, it's just food. We had 3 different church groups fighting over who got to feed us.
Right.
Right? Like one did lunch, one did dinner, one did dessert, and they just rotated through constantly. And that's that huge, it's a heavy lift, man. Can you feed 30 people, 50 people, 100 people
plus people
a day?
Right.
3 squares a day. Where are they going to sleep? Right?
Yeah.
How much water do we have just to prepare food, give people water to drink, and to wash yourself and your equipment? You know,
Right.
It's the logistics side of that I think just gets glossed over. That people think they'll figure it out when it happens. It's like you actually won't. And if it's a real emergency, and your assumptions were wrong, you're not going to figure it out quickly enough for you to not become a casualty.
But what's the old adage? Isn't that like a Napoleonism? Is amateurs talk tactics,
Yep.
professionals talk logistics?
Yep.
It's a testament, right? It's a great second witness. You have to care and feed your operating force so that your operating force can operate.
Yeah, tooth to tail ratio.
Exactly.
Right? Yeah. So Intel talk, decentralized bolt-on Intel.
Yeah.
I think that's
and I think a lot of that can be done remotely, but there is some pounding the pavement work to be done, which is why I requested specifically humaners, because I want to send the right person to ask the right question so we get more meaningful information back. Going around and trying to build rapport enough to find these different areas where we can send teams to, we're really grasping at straws. We're asking very generalized questions like, what do you need? Number one, you have no rapport, so they don't trust you.
Yep.
So the answer that you're going to get is, we don't need anything.
Yep.
And you might get that answer with a smile on their face, where you could onboard that as like, oh, they really don't need anything. No, they do need something. They just don't want to tell you.
Yep.
So if we can start to ask more targeted questions in a manner that builds rapport at the same time, now we're speeding up our intel cycle, and every organization moves at the speed of that intel cycle, right? So if I have targets that are developed, and Jason pointed out, we need to come up with a different name.
The targets?
Yeah.
Yeah, I know.
It's very, something.
Negative connotation.
Right, but if we develop these areas of interest, the faster we can do that, the faster we can deploy assets against those requirements, so that when we get these folks in at 3 p.m. with heavy equipment and the will to get after a problem, we can send them to the problem with everything else that's going on, right? But that gravity from strategic through operational down to the tactical is a real thing.
There was so much to Battle Track as well, right? Like
huge, yeah.
So.
Oh, that was a point I wanted to make. Go ahead.
No, go ahead.
Was dissemination of our intelligence picture. So on the way, driving from here to Jonesboro, I had it in my head. I wanted to use what's called APRS. It's the automatic position reporting system. It's very big with ham radio. And I would say the bulk of APRS is really just radios transmitting their coordinates, so their GPS positions. But it can be expanded to drop basically dots on a map, objects, and annotate what that object is and why. And there's a messaging capability behind APRS. It's not robust, but number one, it exists.
Mm-hmm.
And in the amateur radio sphere, it's very well known,
Mm-hmm.
and which makes that a reliable, repeatable communications method. So I had this idea, all right, we're going to plot all of our dots on a map inside APRS, and that allows us, even if nobody's listening, it gives us an opportunity to transmit this out on a regular interval, where if somebody does decide they want to listen, they'll get all of this information. That was a huge failure.
Okay.
So I tested this in support of the Refuge FTX, and then we put it down so I could tackle other work, and did not have it up and refined prior to Hurricane Helene, which is, again, a testament to, like, if you want to leverage a capability, it needs to be deployment ready. So let's not try to invent new capability out in the field, because we're gonna burn calories and brain cells, and it's going to slow the speed of execution.
Operational drag.
100%.
Yep.
And so that's exactly what happened. And I banged my head against that wall for about a day before I decided no. And that's where Jason, KM4ACK, popped into my head. I was like, oh man, I need to reach out to that guy. Unbeknownst to me, later reached out to Grindstone to volunteer, but we had shut off the flow of volunteers because we were all full up.
Yep.
So it all came full circle. And then Jason and I are talking offline about building these APRS nodes. But that is a capability that we could have flexed out there. Now, the counter to that is, so we need information dissemination. We need that. How we do that, we can have a conversation about. So whether that's APRS or whether that is through, what's the tactical version? ATAC. Whether that's through ATAC or whether that's through another project that I like, DOE came up with, called MAGE. Same thing, a little different. What we use matters less, that we're using it. And I think if we were able to disseminate our intelligence picture amongst the different cats and dogs operating in here, the more effective we can be working together. Big picture stuff. Let's get up and out from the tactical.
Well, and so if we go tactical, operational, strategic, right? My brain, and maybe I suffer from delusions of grandeur. I'm willing to admit that it's possible. But if we go entrepreneur hat, successful entrepreneurs look for the white space, right? Where is nobody's operating inside of this box?
Blue ocean strategy.
100%. That's exactly right. So you have to ask yourself, why? Maybe that box is actually a black hole, right? And it's not possible to be successful, or there's constraints and limiting factors that have caused everybody else to fail when they operated in that white space. Okay, what are those? I see, right now we have Federal Emergency Management Agency. They're not great at their job. We have state emergency management agencies. Most of the states are more invested because they're closer to the problem, closer to their people. But they don't get as many reps and sets as FEMA does, because FEMA is a national agency, right? So then there are local, emergency personnel, emergency management personnel. That's where the EOC comes in, Emergency Operations Center. But disaggregated at the community level, that doesn't exist. So let's now go big picture. Chinese EMP strike or national civil unrest,
where you're going.
Right?
Yeah.
If you had, for lack of a better word, grindstone nodes that had Amron bolt-on commo capability and this bolt-on intel capability, coupled with field teams that are search and rescue, disaster relief, chainsaws, heavy equipment, reconstruction, that type of thing. And there's this large external stimulus, right? We have a pattern that can be replicated for, COG, continuity of government.
Yep, that's exactly what I'm thinking of right now. So I'll do you one better.
Mm-hmm.
Why don't we have a new incoming administration?
Yep.
Can I respectfully request that we revitalize the Office of Civil Defense?
100%.
And that is not for continuity of government. That is for continuity of the public,
Yep.
of the people.
Yep.
And we have different organizations that know how to do this.
Yep.
And we can be, starting to build these procedures now, once again, right? Because we're not really reinventing the wheel. It existed at one point. We just need to shake the dust off and reapply it to today's infrastructure and capabilities, and then start generating these lessons learned. And now the American people have a mechanism to, or one source of truth, for lack of a better word, to start learning these lessons as well, right? Because grindstone's one gear, one cog in this big machine. Where are the lessons learned from the Red Cross and Samaritan House and Team Rubicon? I may disagree with how they execute operationally, but for damn sure they're learning things, and we should all be onboarding those lessons learned.
100%. And that's why when you talk about dissemination, like how do we get this information out? The question in my mind becomes out to where? Out to who, right? So operationally inside of a grindstone deployment to our people on the ground. Okay, but what about everywhere else, right? And that's been one of the cool things coordinating with JJS at Amron, right? We're beginning to be able to share those lessons learned and realize that there's a shared vision there, and that there has been a shared vision there for a long time. There's got to be other organizations that are out there as well, and the bolt-on aspect of it is what's so super interesting, because we've been doing this in an uncoordinated fashion anyway. You think about the tree crew that came from Minnesota on this Helene deployment. Well, they're turnkey, right? Hey, we're a tree crew. Awesome. Boop, bolt it on.
Yep, okay. Exactly.
Go over here, do this. When we were in Idabel, no, I'm sorry. When we were in Idabel, there was a trucking company. They're like, we have trucks and we have trailers. I was like, perfect, poof, bolt on. In Perryton, Texas, Matt Hinton out there, great guy. He was like the de facto perfect local national. He was like, here's a fob. What do you need for equipment? You need roll-offs, you need trucks, and just stick. We're like Velcroing on all these different capabilities based upon what the situation calls for.
Imagine that.
Yeah.
Imagine having capabilities at hand to be able to bolt on and off as needed for a given situation.
Mission configurable.
Right.
But to do that from a civil defense standpoint for continuity of the people. Right. Have you read Raven Rock?
I haven't.
Okay, so it's a book Pastor Joe's been talking about, and it's all about the history of COG in this country, continuity of government, and the massive bunkers that they've built and what the evacuation plans look like and all that. And pretty early on in the Cold War, by the time Kennedy had become president, the government had decided there's just no good way to save the people, so we're not gonna.
Right.
It's like, well, that's cool. Who are you gonna govern?
Also, that's a unilateral decision, right? So you can look at Switzerland, and the Swiss are still building bunkers for all of their people.
Yeah, and also, here's your G3. You will train with it.
Exactly.
Yep.
Yeah, you will be proficient riflemen, right? So what can we do in that vein? Can we, and I'm with you, man. I don't want any more government intrusion. I want to be left alone.
Yep.
Now, also understanding that government is making a lot of things go. So where's the middle ground? And can we incentivize people becoming proficient radio operators or one capability or another? I don't know. But I know this. I know other countries are doing it.
Yep.
Right, wrong, or indifferent, because
Mm-hmm.
I don't know what their approach is.
Mm-hmm.
But it is being done, and we know that there's going to be another thing. There's going to
Mm-hmm.
be another event, and how can we better prepare against
Yeah.
that?
Well, and you should prepare for the most likely threats, right? Most likely most dangerous,
Sure.
right? Most dangerous, I don't know, China high altitude EMPs us, and then all the Iranian sleeper cells go active, and there's a decapitation strike on DC, and end. That's terrible. Cool.
Right. Also, the least
Right.
likely
You
to
want to hang
occur.
out and eat sheep? Because that's my response to that.
Right.
Right? Circle the gates or circle the wagons, close the gates. Me and my homies were going to hang out. But most likely, we live in Oklahoma. It's tornadoes.
Sure.
That's going to happen several dozen times per year in little different places on the map, most of which are going to be out in fields that aren't going to damage anything. But a few of them per year are going to do a lot of damage. Okay, so I should probably have a plan for that. Interruptions in service. The power goes out. We've had that happen in the summer and in the winter. Well, Oklahoma's weird because it will go from -19 to 119 every year, right? So in the
Yeah.
summer, thermoregulation is my point, right? Based
Yeah.
upon the successful flow of electrons. You should probably have a plan for that,
Sure.
summer and winter. So people should prepare for the most likely things. And if you have that bolt-on capability, a mutual assistance group that's mission configurable based upon what the external stimulus is. We need a way to cook food. We need a way to affect security. We need a way to communicate, gather intel, and to what end, right? For me, preservation of life for the people that I love, and to operate from a position of strength that I can be a light out into this community of hurting people. And then what happens that's super cool is once you have that capability, you can deploy it as you see fit. There's a here locally, somebody was building a playground, and they were out there with post hole diggers in this hard ass clay,
Yeah.
right? Trying to me and
In Oklahoma,
Panda were driving by.
may as well be out there with a pencil.
Exactly, exactly, bro.
That sounds terrible.
We're driving by, and I said, "Hey, can you guys wait like a half an hour?" They're like, "Yeah, what's up?" I said, I'm gonna go grab one of our skid steers in the auger, and we'll just drill all these holes for you." Like, you would do that? It's like, I can't stand here and watch you do this,
Right.
knowing that I can just
Help you.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And so they're like, "Thank you so much. Who are you guys?" "Oh, we're with Grindstone." "What's a grindstone?" And so as you develop the capability, the skill set, the network, the infrastructure, you then become like an overwhelming force for good in your community, and expanding circles outward from there, where you can see a need and meet the need because you have the reps and sets to be able to meet the need. And then your capability, your capacity to do good grows. The more you do it, it's just like bench pressing. The more you do
Reps
it,
and
the
sets.
more weight you can move.
Sure.
And then you replicate that disaggregated across the nation, where I don't know what's happening in the redoubt. Not my problem. But those guys up there, they're doing good stuff too. And over in Missouri and in Phoenix and up in the Upper Peninsula of Michigan, everybody's just doing their thing.
Yeah.
And then if there is some external threat that comes here to the homeland, it's like, they got it. We're handling our business here.
So the question that comes to mind is what's the unifying tie there? And I think you've already hit on it previously. It's probably attendance of those different conventions, right? What was the one you went to?
Self-Reliance Festival?
Yeah, Self-Reliance Festival, right? So that is, outside of YouTube or face-to-face conversations, that's the venue for exchanging these ideas. So pie in the sky would be, the Office of Civil Defense or whatever you want to name it.
Yep.
That's at probably the highest level, but it starts with you and your community. And I think using an auger to dig some holes for somebody to speed up their work, I think it's a powerful witnessing opportunity.
Mm-hmm.
Now, I don't know if that guy's an hourly employee and maybe you just pissed him off because that was a whole lot of
They were a
whole lot
church
of
volunteer
hours.
group, so they were good.
All right.
Yeah.
But interesting. And that wasn't a disaster.
Mm-mm.
That was your ability
Mm-hmm.
to leverage assets, to leverage capability that you already had in the bank
Yeah.
to help somebody else.
And that's kind of my point. I know I can operate at this level. So when I see a problem that's all the way down here, it's like, oh, gotcha. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
So I'm now stress inoculated to everything in between baseline and this.
Yeah.
You
Well,
know?
it goes back to something I tell myself a lot is if I have the capability and the opportunity, I have the responsibility of doing something.
Help.
Because I've been blessed with the knowledge and the stuff to do a thing,
Mm-hmm.
and blessed with the opportunity to do the reps and sets. Well, now I have the responsibility of doing that and passing that on.
That's a great word. We're going to end with that. If you guys want to see my brother here in another episode, you let me know in the comments. I might be able to talk you into coming back and doing this again.
Yeah, we can do it again. I'm sorry if this went long.
No, it was great.
I don't know what we're at.
I think a couple hours, which is fine. That's
I'm
good.
sorry, Dudley.
No, it's good for the podcast. You guys know me. You can find me on all the socials, bearindependent.com. You can't find him. Don't worry about him. He's awesome. You got any parting words for the audience?
No, I would just say thank you for your leadership, not just organizationally, but spiritually. I think it shows throughout the community that we have here. I think it's something that's really special, and I hope that it can be replicated elsewhere.
Appreciate you, brother.
Yeah, bless you, man.
Bless you, brother. Shalom.
Shalom.